The wind howled like a wounded animal through the snow-laden pines of Talkeetna as Jake Carter tightened his grip on his daughter Peyton's mittened hand. The National Weather Service had warned this would be the worst blizzard in decades. The kind of storm old-timers still whispered about in Anchorage bars. Jake's 3 German shepherds plowed ahead through waist-deep drifts, their normally confident gait now hesitant. Rex, the alpha, suddenly froze mid-step, his ears pricking forward, not at a scent, at a sound, a pitiful whimper, so fragile it barely carried over the shrieking wind. Jake's survival instincts screamed to keep moving. They had mere minutes to reach shelter. But that sound, it wasn't the wind. It was alive, and it was dying. Rex's deep growl vibrated through the icy air as he pawed frantically at the snow beneath a shattered spruce. Juno and Thor circled the spot like nervous sentries, their whines swallowed by the storm. Peyton dropped to her knees, her small hands digging through the powder until her fingers brushed something warm. "Dad!" she screamed over the wind. The snow fell away to reveal a tiny bobcat kitten, its spotted fur matted with frozen blood, one hind leg twisted at a sickening angle. Jake's biologist mind cataloged the injury's hypothermia setting in shock, probable internal bleeding. The kitten's clouded blue eyes fluttered open for just a second, meeting Peyton's. In that moment, every scientific protocol Jake had spent 20 years memorizing evaporated. There would be no walking away. The kitten's shallow breaths came in ragged bursts, each one a battle against the Alaskan cold. Jake's trained hands assessed the damaged 3 broken ribs, a dislocated hip, and those terrible puncture wounds around its tiny abdomen. Trap injuries, fresh ones. Peyton's tears froze on her cheeks as she cradled the shivering creature. "We have to save him," she begged, her voice breaking. Behind them, Jake's flashlight beam caught the crimson trail leading deeper into the woods, drag marks in the snow telling a story too horrible to voice. Whatever had happened here, it wasn't natural. The mother bobcat had put up one hell of a fight before being taken. And judging by the fresh boot prints circling the area, the perpetrator might still be nearby. The wind carried a new sound now, not just the storm's wail, but the distant crunch of snow under heavy footsteps. Jake's stomach turned as his light revealed the truth. A line of brutal leg-hold traps, their rusty teeth glinting with fresh blood. Illegal models, the kind banned in Alaska decades ago. Peyton gasped as the beam caught something worse, tufts of adult bobcat fur caught in the barbed metal. "They took his mama," she whispered. Jake's jaw clenched. This wasn't just trapping. It was slaughter. The boot prints told the rest size 12, deep tread, heading toward the old mining road. Clint Slade's territory. Everyone in town knew the deranged trapper's reputation. But this was monstrous. Just then, Rex's warning snarl cut through the night. Not at the traps. At the shadow moving through the trees 50 yards away. The glint of a rifle barrel caught the moonlight. They weren't alone. Abigail Sullivan's veterinary clinic was warm, but her expression was Arctic cold when Jake burst in with the dying kitten. "You know the law," she said, hands already moving to assess the injuries. "Wildlife rehab requires permits. And this one," she shook her head at the X-ray. "Compound fractures, internal bleeding. It's cruel to prolong this." But Peyton's choked sob filled the room as Scout. The name had slipped out before Jake could stop it. Weakly licked her finger. Then something extraordinary happened. Juno, normally aloof with other animals, nudged the exam table and began meticulously cleaning the kitten's face with her tongue. Abby froze. In 20 years of practice, she'd never seen a dog nurture a natural predator. Jake saw the exact moment his wife's professional resolve cracked. "God damn it," she muttered, reaching for the surgical kit. Some rules were worth breaking when they stood between life and death. Abby worked through the night, her skilled hands repairing what they could while Peyton kept vigil. "His body temperature still dangerously low," Abby warned, wrapping the tiny form in heated blankets. "And that's not even the biggest problem. Wild animals often reject human care. Their instincts tell them to shut down." But as dawn's first light crept through the blinds, a miracle unfolded. Scout stirred weakly, then let out the most un-Bobcat-like sound, a tiny chirp directed at Rex, who responded by gently nuzzling him. Peyton's joyful gasp filled the room. Abby's professional skepticism warred with the evidence before her. This kitten was fighting to live in ways that defied every textbook. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside, an even more powerful force had taken root. The unshakable will of a creature determined to survive against all odds. Sunrise painted the snowdrifts gold as Abby slumped exhausted at the kitchen table. The statistics had been clear: less than 10% chance of survival. Yet when Jake checked the makeshift incubator, a cardboard box lined with blankets and warmed by 3 very attentive dogs, Scout wasn't just alive, he was attempting to stand on his splinted leg. The kitten wobbled, then collapsed against Rex's massive paw. What happened next stole Jake's breath. Rex, the stoic protector, began licking Scout's ears with the same care he'd once shown his own puppies. Peyton burst into happy tears as Scout responded by attempting to purr, the sound rough and unpracticed but unmistakable. In that moment, Jake understood. This wasn't just survival. It was the beginning of something extraordinary, something that would challenge everything he knew about the boundaries between species. By week's end, Scout had claimed his place in the Carter household with fearless determination. He ate from the dog's bowls, despite Abby's protests, slept curled between Juno's paws, and even tried to mimic Thor's play bows, though his bobcat physiology made for some hilarious failures. "That's not a wild animal," Abby muttered one morning as Scout helped Peyton with her homework by batting at her pencil. "That's a house cat with an identity crisis." But Jake noticed the way Abby secretly saved the choicest bits of salmon for Scout at dinner. The real marvel wasn't just Scout's adaptation, it was how thoroughly the dogs had accepted him. Rex stood guard while Scout napped. Juno shared her favorite chew toys, and Thor, the mischievous youngest, had taken to carrying the tiny bobcat around by his scruff like an overgrown kitten. Nature's lines had blurred beyond recognition in this Alaskan winter, and none of them would ever be the same. The worn composition book lay open on Peyton's bed, its pages filled with childish scrawl and crayon drawings of a spotted cat playing with 3 dogs. Jake shouldn't have looked, but the entry from the night they found Scout caught his eye. "Today we saved a baby bobcat. Dad says wild animals don't make good pets, but Scout's different. I named him Scout because Mom says Scouts are brave and find their way home. When I was little and scared of the dark, Rex used to sleep by my bed. Now Scout sleeps by Rex. Maybe we all need someone to help us be brave." Jake's throat tightened. Outside the window, Scout practiced his pouncing in the snow, his once cloudy eyes now clear and golden. Some lessons couldn't be taught in school. They had to be lived, with paws and claws and unconditional love. The historic storm would be remembered for decades. Roofs collapsed, power lines down, the highway closed for weeks. But in the Carter household, warmth persisted against all odds. Scout, now healed enough to climb onto the couch, much to Abby's exasperation, sprawled across Rex's back like a living stole. The dog's acceptance remained absolute, their bond defying every biological norm. As Jake watched Peyton teach Scout to shake paws, resulting in more scratches than success, he realized the true miracle wasn't that they'd saved Scout's life. It was that Scout, in his wild, imperfect way, had saved something in each of them, a reminder that love and family come in forms we never expect. Outside, the wind still howled. Inside, for dogs, because let's face it, Scout was one now, and their humans had found shelter not just from the storm, but from a world that too often valued rules over compassion. The blizzard would fade into memory, but this was forever. Peyton's shaky smartphone footage showed what no wildlife documentary could capture. A 6-week-old bobcat responding to his name like a trained pup. The video went viral overnight. There was Scout, his spotted tail wagging clumsily as he bounded toward Rex at Peyton's call. Then the money shot, the tiny wildcat rolling onto his back, allowing Thor to groom his belly while making that strange chirp-purr hybrid sound. Jake's university colleagues flooded his inbox with disbelief. "That's not instinct," wrote Dr. Harris from Fairbanks. "That's learned behavior." Impossible in Felids. But the millions of views didn't lie. Neither did the hate mail from fringe conservationists calling Scout an abomination. The Carters' quiet Alaskan life had just become very public and very complicated. Abby dropped her stethoscope the first time it happened. Scout, now 3 months old and thriving, had been playing vet with Juno when Rex came charging in from patrol. The kitten's response? A sound that froze the entire household. Not a hiss, not a growl, but a raspy woof that echoed through the cabin. "That's not possible," Abby whispered, grabbing her phone to record. Over the next week, Scout developed an entire repertoire of dog-like vocalizations, warning yips when snowmobiles approached, playful arfs during tug-of-war with Thor. Jake's wildlife tracking equipment captured something even stranger. When separated from the dogs, Scout's distress calls weren't feline at all. They were perfect imitations of Juno's howls. The implications were staggering. This wasn't mimicry. This was cross-species communication. The truth revealed itself during a routine checkup. As Abby lifted Scout onto the exam table, Rex, normally stoic, began pacing and whining. When the kitten yelped at a vaccine, the 90-pound shepherd actually bared his teeth at Abby. "Easy, boy," Jake murmured, but Rex ignored him, nudging Scout protectively behind his massive body. That's when they understood Rex wasn't just accepting Scout. He'd imprinted on him as his own. Later footage showed the shepherd teaching the Bobcat, demonstrating how to drink from the pet fountain, correcting too rough play with a warning nip, even herding Scout away from the wood stove. The most poignant moment came at bedtime, Rex's nightly ritual of licking Scout's face clean, just as he'd done with his own puppies years before. This wasn't coexistence. This was parenthood. The blizzard's return rattled the cabin windows as Peyton lay awake. Scout curled against her chest. Then the whispers began, not human, not quite canine, but something in between. "Protect the cub," Juno's voice seemed to say. Peyton sat bolt upright. The 3 dogs stood at attention by her bed, their eyes reflecting the moonlight unnaturally. Rex's mouth didn't move, but the words formed clearly in her mind. "The metal-jawed man comes." Before she could process this, Scout stiffened, his ears pivoting toward the woods. A gunshot cracked in the distance. Peyton's scream brought Jake running, but by the time he arrived, the dogs were just dogs again. Had she dreamed it? Then the motion light flashed on, revealing fresh boot prints circling the house. Someone had been out there. Someone with size 12 boots. The general store buzzed with gossip about that TV Bobcat when Clint Slade made his entrance. Silence fell as the trapper slammed a mangled pelt on the counter. "That demon cat's been raiding my traps," he spat, showing teeth as yellow as his snowsuit. "Tore up $500 worth of gear." The shopkeeper recoiled. The pelt wasn't marten or lynx. It was German shepherd fur, Rex's missing littermate. Jake's blood ran colder than the Yukon when Peyton called, sobbing. Scout was gone. The back door showed claw marks not from escape but from being dragged. Clint's final words echoed in Jake's mind as he loaded his rifle. "Wild things belong dead or caged. I'll fix your mistake proper this time." The race against darkness had begun. Ranger Bianca Herrera's cruiser kicked up gravel as she delivered the cease and desist order. "This isn't a request, Jake," she said, avoiding Peyton's tear-filled eyes. "State law prohibits keeping Class A predators. Scout goes to Anchorage Wildlife Center tomorrow." The paperwork included damning photos Scout stalking the school playground, actually playing tag, hunting the neighbor's Labrador, sharing a chew toy. Worst was the video still of Scout's teeth near a toddler's face. Cropped to hide, he was gently taking a hot dog from Peyton's little brother. "We've had complaints," Bianca admitted. "Mostly from one caller. Wouldn't give his name." The unspoken truth hung between them. Clint had won. Unless they could prove Scout wasn't a wild animal anymore. But how do you quantify love in legal terms? The courtroom buzzed as 12-year-old Peyton approached the stand. Scout cradled in her arms like a baby. The kitten, now 20 pounds of muscle and claws, lay placidly, even when the prosecutor waved a stuffed rabbit. "Your Honor," Peyton's voice broke. Scout thinks he's a dog because dogs raised him. He doesn't hunt. He eats kibble. He comes when called better than Thor. To demonstrate, she set Scout down. Sit. The bobcat sat. Paw. A spotted limb extended. Gasps filled the room when Scout rolled over at the command. Play dead. The clincher? Peyton produced Rex's favorite ball. Scout retrieved it perfectly, dropping it at the judge's feet. The old man's stern expression faltered. Then the wildlife specialist dropped his bombshell. Your Honor, this animal cannot be released. He'd approach humans, or worse, dogs. He'd be dead within a week. The kitchen smelled of salmon, Scout's favorite, as the Carters moved through the motions of dinner. Abby fed the kitten by hand, her tears salting each morsel. Jake meticulously packed Scout's going-away bag, the chewed-up stuffed moose, a bag of his special kibble, even a tuft of Rex's fur for comfort. Peyton didn't speak at all, just pressed her face into Scout's neck, memorizing his scent. Pine needles and dog breath and something uniquely wild. Rex knew. The shepherd refused his meal, standing guard at the door as if willing the dawn not to come. When Scout, sensing the tension, began making those odd dog-like whimpers, even stoic Jake broke down. They'd won the legal battle. Scout would live at a sanctuary, not be euthanized. But as the kitten fell asleep curled between his canine brothers, the unspeakable truth lingered. This was goodbye. The government van idled in the driveway as Ranger Bianca fastened Scout's travel crate. The bobcat went willingly, too willingly, nuzzling her hand like any family pet. Then Rex moved. The old shepherd, who'd never disobeyed a command in his life, blocked the van door. His grizzled muzzle raised in a howl so mournful it raised goosebumps. Juno and Thor joined in, creating a canine chorus that echoed off the mountains. Scout responded with his own sound. Not a howl, not a cry, but something in between that made the wildlife techs exchange nervous glances. Peyton, red-eyed but dry-faced, pressed a final gift into the crate, her well-worn fleece, the one Scout had suckled on as a baby. Find your way home, she whispered. As the van disappeared down the snow-packed road, Rex's howls turned to whimpers. That night, and for many after, he slept not in his bed, but in Scout's empty crate. The Arctic Valley Wildlife Center reeked of antiseptic and fear. Scout's crate opened into a 20 by 20 natural habitat. Enclosure, fake rocks, a token tree, and worst of all, another bobcat. The resident male took one sniff of Scout's dog-scented fur and attacked. Rangers intervened, but the damage was done. Not just the physical wounds, but the psychological ones. Scout spent that first night pressed against the fence closest to the road, his nose working frantically. The caretakers didn't understand why he ignored the fresh rabbit in his bowl until one observed him trying to bury it like a dog hides a bone. By week's end, Scout refused food entirely, pacing the exact length of Rex's old patrol route around the Carter property, 42 steps turn, 42 steps back. His only comfort, Peyton's fleece, now threadbare from constant kneading. Then, on the 10th night, the unthinkable Scout's enclosure gate swung open in a freak windstorm. The security cameras captured his hesitation, his golden eyes scanning the distant mountains. Then, with a resolution that chilled the staff, the frantic call from Arctic Valley came at 3:17 a.m. Jake sat bolt upright as the wildlife director's panicked voice crackled through the phone. Scout's gone. Peyton's fingers trembled, pulling up the GPS tracker's last known location. A frozen creek bed 2 miles from the facility. Then nothing. Static. Jake's mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Wolves, trappers, hypothermia. But as the search party geared up, Ranger Bianca noticed something peculiar. The broken gate latch showed scratch marks on the inside. That's no escape, she muttered. Something let him out. Peyton's breath caught. The camera footage would later reveal the truth. In the storm's chaos, Juno and Thor had appeared outside the enclosure, working the latch with practiced precision. The question wasn't how Scout escaped. It was why the dogs were 100 miles from home. Susitna River's frozen surface groaned under Scout's weight as he picked his way across the midnight ice. Behind him, the Wildlife Center's floodlights faded. Ahead lay endless black spruce forest. Then the cracking started. Icy water seeped through hairline fractures as the kitten-sized bobcat froze mid-step. Suddenly, a familiar scent cut through the fear Rex's paw prints, fresh in the snow leading to shore. Scout's survival instinct warred with something stronger as the ice gave way. Plunged into the killing cold, his muscles seized. Then a miracle. Thor's massive head burst through the surface, jaws clamping gently on Scout's scruff as Juno barked directions from shore. Later, biologists would call it impossible. But as the three dogs curled around their shivering charge in a hollowed-out snowdrift, their shared body heat defying the -30 night, one truth became clear. Love had its own physics. The Dalton Highway's icy asphalt burned Scout's paws as he darted between roaring semi-trucks. 2 weeks into his journey, his ribs showed through thinning fur. Hunger drove him to desperate acts, raiding a roadhouse dumpster, where he gorged on stale hamburger buns until nausea hit. That's when the headlights pinned him. Not a truck. Clint Slade's mud-spattered Bronco. Well, look what the storm dragged back. The trapper chuckled, leveling his tranquilizer gun. Scout's canine-learned instincts screamed run, but his weakened body faltered. The dart grazed his ear just as a familiar howl split the night Rex, barreling out of the tree line like a gray ghost. What happened next became local legend. A 110-pound German Shepherd versus an armed man, with Scout as the prize. Clint's final shot went wide as Rex's teeth closed on the gun barrel, shattering it like kindwood. The trapper's scream echoed through the pass as the dogs vanished with their bobcat into the boreal forest. The scent markers should have warned Scout away. But after 23 days on the move, his canine-raised mind didn't recognize the danger until it was too late. The Denali wolf pack surrounded him at twilight 7 strong, their winter-thin frames making them desperate. Scout's bobcat instincts finally surfaced in a display that stunned the circling predators. Arched back, ears flat, a hiss that showed all his teeth. Then Rex crashed through the brush, Juno and Thor flanking him in perfect formation. The standoff that followed rewrote wildlife textbooks. The wolves recognized the dog's defensive posture, not as prey, but as fellow pack hunters. Scout's hybrid nature confused their instincts long enough for Rex's tactical retreat to work. As the pack debated, Scout and his guardians slipped away into the gathering blizzard. But the encounter left its mark. For the first time in his life, Scout had hunted. A snowshoe hare, left half-eaten near their shelter. Rex's disapproving growl said everything. Peyton's heart stopped when the Wildlife Center's monitor beeped to life. After 3 weeks of silence, Scout's GPS collar had miraculously reactivated and was moving southwest at an impossible pace. That's 15 miles a day, Dr. Reeves gasped. No bobcat travels that far except. The dots connected as the signal passed familiar landmarks: Hatcher Pass, the Susitna tributary, Old Man Nakota's fishing cabin. Jake's hands shook plotting the course. He's not wandering. He's navigating. Meanwhile, exhausted but determined, Scout pressed on through the pain. His paws left bloody prints across the glacial till, his once glossy coat matted with burrs. Yet each time he faltered, Rex nudged him forward, Juno scouted the trail ahead, and Thor brought gifts of ptarmigan scraps. The GPS didn't show the whole story. This wasn't one animal's journey. It was a family's odyssey. A pre-dawn hush blanketed the Carter farm as Peyton tossed fitfully in bed. Then, a sound she dreamed of for weeks. Rex's alert bark, reserved for only one occasion. She flew downstairs in time to see Abby drop her coffee mug. Outside, the motion light flickered on, illuminating a scene that defied reason. 3 emaciated dogs ringed a skeletal bobcat at the tree line. Scout's golden eyes locked onto Peyton's through the window as he uttered a sound no wildcat should make: Rex's exact "I'm home" whine. Jake's boots crunched in the snow as he approached slowly, hands raised. Scout's reaction shattered the last scientific doubt. He belly-crawled forward, tail wagging in clumsy circles, before collapsing into Peyton's arms. The miracle wasn't that he'd returned. It was that he'd remembered what home meant. The vet clinic lights burned late as Abby worked over her most extraordinary patient. Scout's injuries read like an Alaskan survival guide, frostbite on 3 paws, an infected trap graze along his flank, ribs visible through his patchy fur. Yet through the pain, his behavior remained unmistakably dog, licking Peyton's tears, rolling submissively for Rex's inspection, even play-bowing weakly at Thor. Dr. Reeves, flown in from Anchorage, adjusted his glasses in disbelief. This animal's blood work shows acute starvation, yet his cortisol levels are normal. That's chemically impossible unless... His voice trailed off as Scout nuzzled Peyton's palm. The answer hung unspoken love had quite literally kept Scout alive. Across the room, Jake noticed something stranger. Rex, Juno and Thor showed identical injuries to their Bobcat brother. Not a coincidence. A shared journey. The wildlife director's hands trembled holding the x-rays. These fractures alone. He pointed to Scout's healed hip, the old break from the original trap. Should have left him crippled. And this, the blood panel showed near-fatal protein deficiency. No mammal survives this without. His monologue died as Scout demonstrated his newest trick, dragging Peyton's backpack across the room at her command. Reeves' professional facade cracked. I've dedicated my life to studying animals. But this, he knelt eye to eye with the Bobcat. This is something else. Outside, the northern lights pulsed green as Old Man Nakota's words echoed in Jake's memory. When the storm cat walks, the rules change. Maybe some truths didn't need scientific validation. Maybe they just were. The dog's warning barks came too late. Clint Slade's snowmobile skidded into the yard at dawn, his breath reeking of whiskey and rage. That demon cat's mine, he roared, pumping his shotgun. What happened next unfolded in slow motion. Rex's lunge for the gun barrel, Abby's scream, Peyton throwing herself over Scout. The blast shattered the morning calm, and Clint's own kneecap as the recoil sent him sprawling. Jake didn't flinch as he pinned the trapper in the snow. You messed with the wrong family. Sheriff's deputies would later find Clint's abandoned traps, all 47 of them, mysteriously sprung and buried under fresh powder. The wildlife camera footage showed only shadows moving through the storm. But everyone knew justice in Alaska takes many forms. Blood bloomed across the snow as Clint's bullet grazed Rex's shoulder. Then Scout moved with a speed that blurred the line between Bobcat and Ghost. His leap carried 20 pounds of fury straight to the trapper's face, claws sheathed but force enough to knock the shotgun skyward. The second shot harmlessly pierced the northern lights as man and wildcat tumbled. What Clint saw in those golden eyes wasn't animal rage, but something far more terrifying, human-like calculation. Scout's final move wasn't an attack, but a statement. He gently removed Clint's fur hat with his teeth and presented it to Rex like a trophy. The message was clear: we protect our own. As the sheriff cuffed the sobbing trapper, Peyton buried her face in Scout's fur. Some bonds, once forged, can't be broken by bullets or bureaucrats. Some families choose themselves. The golden Alaskan sunlight filtered through the cabin window, illuminating 2 spotted bundles of energy tussling on the rug. Mist and Wisp Scout's now full-grown offspring represented living proof of nature's adaptability. Mist moved with his father's uncanny canine-like gait, while Wisp displayed more traditional Bobcat behaviors, except when playing fetch with Thor's grandchildren. Peyton, now a young woman studying wildlife biology at University of Alaska, smiled as she reviewed her research notes. Cross-species socialization appears hereditary when imprinting occurs during critical developmental windows. Translation Scout had passed on his extraordinary traits. The camera trap footage playing on her laptop showed Mist patrolling the property perimeter with Rex Jr., while Wisp demonstrated her unique talent, opening the pantry door to steal dog treats. Some legacies couldn't be contained by textbooks. The howling wind carried tales through Talkeetna's streets, stories of a ghostly Bobcat dog hybrid that still roamed Hatcher Pass. The truth was both simpler and more profound. Mist had indeed become a formidable hunter, though his techniques baffled wildlife experts. He'd tree a lynx, then wait patiently like a pointer dog for Jake to arrive. Wisp, meanwhile, had become the town's unlikely mascot, often seen helping at the general store by unpacking shipments of cat food. As for Scout, now a majestic 35-pound Tom with scars telling his survival story, he divided his time between mentoring his cubs and keeping vigil with elderly Rex on the Howling Hill. The veterinary journal, calling him the most documented felid in history, sat unread on the coffee table. Some legends prefer to live quietly. The Yupik elder's gnarled hands trembled as he stroked Wisp's head during his final visit to the Carter homestead. A Put's child became Keat's kin, he murmured, using the Tlingit names for snow spirit and dog. Now the circle completes. That night, under dancing northern lights, Nakota passed peacefully in his sleep, but not before gifting Peyton a carved totem depicting 3 dogs and a bobcat. The morning revealed its secret when sunlight hit the grooves. The figure's shadows showed the animals standing as one creature. At the funeral potlatch, tribal drummers incorporated an unusual rhythm, the staccato pattern of a bobcat's purr mixed with a dog's heartbeat. Scout watched from the ridge, his golden eyes reflecting centuries of wilderness wisdom. Some truths don't need translation. The college acceptance letter from Cornell's veterinary program lay unopened as Peyton knelt in the snow beside Scout. "I have to go learn how to protect others like you," she whispered, pressing her forehead to his. The bobcat responded by gently removing her mitten with his teeth, his signature move since kittenhood. Inside, she found his gift, a faded dog tag reading REX that had gone missing years ago. The accompanying wine held notes of both canine and feline, a sound unique to their family. As Peyton's tears froze on the tags, Scout demonstrated his newest trick, carefully zipping her suitcase shut with his paws. The lesson was clear. Love means letting go, but never forgetting. The northern lights blazed green as Peyton's truck disappeared down the road, Scout's howl cry carrying farther than physics should allow. Spring thaw revealed Rex's final resting place atop his beloved lookout point. Scout curled vigilantly beside the simple wooden marker. The old shepherd's passing had been as noble as his life one last patrol of the perimeter. Then lying down with a sigh between his human and bobcat families. What happened next became local folklore. On the first night after burial, neighbors reported an unearthly sound echoing across the valley. Not just Scout's voice, but a perfect harmony blending canine howl, feline yowl, and something uncannily human. Security cameras captured the impossible image: Scout standing sentinel as ghostly shadows of 3 dogs materialized briefly in the aurora's glow. Next morning, fresh paw prints encircled the grave, some feline, some canine, all leading toward the rising sun. Grief counselors would later marvel at how the Carter family processed their loss. But in Alaska, some goodbyes aren't endings, they're transformations. The Hollywood producer's offer arrived in gilded envelopes, 7 figures for the rights to Scout's story. Jake burned the contract in the wood stove while Abby explained the facts of Tinseltown to a confused Wisp. "They'd make you a cartoon," she sighed, scratching the bobcat's ears. "Probably give you a talking moose sidekick." The family's refusal sparked national headlines, but Peyton's viral TED Talk explained their choice. Some bonds are too sacred to commodify. Meanwhile, Scout himself remained blissfully unaware of fame, dividing his time between napping in Rex's old doghouse and mentoring Mist in the fine art of stealing bacon. When a persistent reporter finally cornered the famous feline, she got more than she bargained for. Scout posed for photos by recreating all his old commands, then stole her microphone and buried it beside Thor's favorite bone. The resulting footage got 10 million views. Some stories tell themselves best. The Smithsonian exhibit When Boundaries Blur. The Scout phenomenon drew record crowds, but the star attraction refused to attend. Instead, live footage showed Scout doing what he did best, mediating a dispute between Mist and the new puppy by sitting on them both. Scientists marveled at the 3D printed brain scan comparison. Scout's neural pathways showed unique hybrid patterns lighting up for both canine and feline stimuli. But the exhibit's emotional centerpiece wasn't high-tech. It was Peyton's childhood diary, open to a crayon sketch of 3 dogs and a bobcat captioned, "My brothers." Nearby, Abby's veterinary charts told their own love story: vaccination records where species had been crossed out and rewritten family. The guest book's most common comment? "Made me believe in connection again." The historic cold snap tested even Alaskan resilience, But the Carter homestead had secret weapons, Wisp sleeping across the pipes to prevent freezing, Mist herding the chickens into the garage, and Scout. Well, being Scout. When temperatures plunged to -50 degrees Fahrenheit, the Bobcat demonstrated another impossible skill. He taught the wood stove-obsessed puppy safe distances by dragging him away each time he got too close, then sharing his heated bed. Neighbors reported seeing the unlikely trio Bobcat, German Shepherd, and Goofy Lab mix, moving as a single unit through the snowdrifts. The local paper's headline said it all: unnatural selection. How one hybrid cat redefined survival. When the thaw finally came, the wildlife camera revealed Scout's final surprise. He'd been supplementing the dog's diets with gifts of frozen ptarmigan, stored neatly beside Rex's grave like a furry commissary. The congressional hearing on interspecies bonding laws would have been dry as dust if not for the surprise witness, 18-year-old Wisp, who calmly walked leashless through the Capitol Rotunda and demonstrated her ability to alert to diabetic scent samples. The stunned silence that followed her perfect performance broke when an elderly senator murmured, "My God, it's like seeing Lassie reborn as a wildcat." Back home, Scout celebrated by doing what he loved, helping Jake split firewood, by sitting on the logs, and stealing Abby's scrubs to make a nest in Rex's old crate. That night, as the northern lights danced, Peyton's latest research paper arrived: Epigenetic Inheritance of Cross-Species Socialization in Felis catus. Jake skimmed the abstract before tossing it aside. Some things don't need peer review to be true. The email arrived on Scout's 12th birthday, a rarity for bobcats in the wild, though he'd long defied those statistics. The attached video showed a trembling shelter bobcat kitten responding to dog commands in California. "We call him Echo," wrote the rescuer. "He was raised by golden retrievers." Sound familiar? As the Carters watched, Scout did something extraordinary. He pressed his paw to the screen, then retrieved Peyton's old baby blanket from the closet. The message was clear. The story wasn't ending. It was multiplying. That night, as Mist and Wisp curled around their aging father, Jake finally understood old man Nakota's prophecy: love, once set loose in the world, becomes its own kind of wild. And like the northern lights, it can't be contained by cages, or even by death. Some bonds simply are, and always will be. Clint Slade's prison diary surfaced after his death, its pages smelling of tobacco and regret. One entry stood out: April 12th. That demon cat came again last night. Not to raid traps, just watched me, with those gold eyes that understood too much. My ma used to tell stories about skinwalkers. Maybe the tribes knew something we don't. The final page held a dried paw print, too large for a bobcat, too small for a lynx. Warden reported Clint would wake screaming about ghost dogs protecting the Carter land. Some say his old traps still rattle on windless nights near Hatcher Pass. Dr. Eleanor Reeves' lifetime study revealed the shocking truth. Rex's litter had been orphaned by the same trapper who took Scout's mother. The dogs recognized another victim, she explained. Their compassion wasn't canine or feline. It was universal. The deeper analysis showed something stranger: Scout's purrs vibrated at 52 hertz, the same frequency as a dog's contentment whine. He spoke their language without knowing it, Reeves concluded. The research won awards, but Peyton knew the simpler truth. Love doesn't care about species. Only that you show up, day after day, with your whole heart, and maybe some treats. Old man Nakota's granddaughter recited the tale at the cultural center. Long ago, when animals still spoke, a snow spirit loved a wolf. Their child walked between worlds. Neither wolf nor spirit, but something greater. She nodded to Scout, now a living legend napping in the front row. Some say when the balance tips too far one way, the universe creates a bridge. Later, biologists would note Scout's DNA showed rare markers from an isolated bobcat population near Glacier Bay. The tribal elders simply smiled. Science and stories they knew were just different paths up the same mountain. February 14, 2023. Talkeetna security cameras caught it first. The aurora borealis swirling into unmistakable letters above the Carter farm. Scientists blamed rare atmospheric conditions. The town knew better. That same night, every dog within 50 miles reportedly sat facing north, ears pricked. Scout himself seemed unaware of the fuss, too busy stealing Jake's socks. But when Peyton checked the wildlife cameras at dawn, she found the perfect shot Scout silhouetted against the glowing sky, with mist and wisp flanking him like living parentheses. The image went viral with one caption: "Family is who stays for the encore." The retirement interview shocked Alaska. "I falsified Scout's release paperwork," Bianca admitted. "Marked him deceased so bureaucrats would stop asking." She revealed the Wildlife Center had secretly returned Scout twice before his famous escape. Some animals, they're not meant for cages. Her proudest moment? Erasing Clint's final complaint from the records. The confession cost Bianca her pension but gained something better. Scout himself delivered a thank you gift to her cabin. A freshly caught salmon? And the missing key to his old enclosure. Some laws, Bianca decided that night, were meant to be broken by moonlight. Peyton's Instagram post broke the internet. Scout curled between Rex, Juno, and Thor's gravestones, his paw resting on each marker. The caption read simply, "Still watching over us." Meteorologists confirmed the photo's timing coincided with a rare daytime aurora. What the pixels didn't show was Scout's secret ritual. Every morning, he still patrolled the property perimeter, pausing to sniff each dog's favorite spots. And if security footage sometimes showed foreshadows where only one animal stood, well, Alaska winters do strange things to the light and to the heart. The audio engineers were stumped. Scout's howl, analyzed as 47% canine, 53% feline, with a 6-second sustain impossible for either species. Wildlife experts theorized about hybrid vocal cords. The Carters knew better. That sound contained memories of Rex's protective growls, Juno's happy yips, Thor's play barks. When Scout sang to the northern lights now, the valley fell silent to listen. Even the wolves stopped answering. Somewhere between a cry and a prayer, between species and stars, lived the song of a creature who'd rewritten the rules, and was just getting started. The official record states, Felis catus, male, 14 years old. Cross-species socialization case study. The truth? That's like calling the northern lights atmospheric gases. Because how do you quantify the way Scout still cocks his head at Peyton's old home videos? Or why Mist fetches Jake's slippers without training? The vet charts say Wisp should weigh 28 pounds, except when she's comforting sick children. When somehow, she feels lighter than hope. Science will keep dissecting the Scout phenomenon for decades. But some mysteries are better left whole. Like love, like family, like whatever magic made a bobcat decide he was home. Gold miners swear by it. A ghostly bobcat leading lost hikers to safety. Truckers report a glowing-eyed figure herding moose off the Dalton Highway. The nursing home's therapy dogs all perk up at 3:17 a.m., tails wagging at empty corners. Science scoffs, but Alaska knows legends don't die. They adapt. Back at the homestead, Scout naps more these days, his muzzle gone gray but his eyes still holding that impossible light. Mist and Wisp have taken over patrols, though they still defer to their father at mealtimes. Some bonds, it seems, even time can't touch. Because you recognize that look. Scout gives the horizon at dusk, part wild, part tame, wholly at peace. You felt that ache when Mist nuzzles Rex's weathered collar. You know why Wisp still saves the last bite of salmon for invisible friends. This was never just about a bobcat. It was about the spaces between species, between science and spirit, between what is and what could be. So yes, let the tears fall. They're the tribute every miracle deserves. And as the Alaskan stars bear witness tonight, 3 shadows still walk beside one small bobcat, forever bound by the simplest truth. Love is the wildest thing of all.